Welcome to Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where you'll hear from industry leaders in science, technology, and innovation about the power of strategic storytelling. With decades of experience, our guests will share their own insights and real-world stories to help you avoid red light barriers and ignite green light solutions, from the Zoom room to the boardroom. In each episode, we'll corkscrew downward into the guests' personal experiences of challenge and success, highlighting strategies that turn complex ideas into clear, compelling storylines for stakeholders. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately to drive the vision of innovation with your team. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Red Light, Green Light. I am your host, Cindy Skalicki, and I'm thrilled to bring you another expert who's with me today, Jeff Rogers. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in Red Light, Green Light, we meet with leaders who are crazy smart when it comes to figuring out how to finesse messaging, who have expertise in some lanes that, not everybody has. And you are just a fantastic guest for me for a specific reason, which is your prowess in storytelling. So everybody, you are being graced with the presence of the NSA Storytelling Champion of 2024. He was number one, and I have to say, I was privileged to be part of some of the early stages of viewing the storyline that won before it hit the main stage. So Jeff's also the owner at Jeff Rogers Unlimited, and he's got a fantastic background, which I'm going to let him share with us in terms of your career storytelling, your career stepping stones. Jeff, give us a little bit of a snapshot.
Sure. Well, I actually started in a place I think a lot of communicators start is in the theater. And I started as an actor and eventually became a writer and a director. I worked at a place called the Second City in Chicago. And for folks who aren't familiar with that, it's an improvisational theater, one of the oldest in the country. And it is the home of people such as John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Stephen Carell, Steve Colbert, Steve Carell. These are the folks I came up with, and Tina Fey, Amy Poehler. And so it was an incredible training ground for really learning how to communicate efficiently and off the top of your head, right? So you're improvising a lot of the time.
Right.
But also it was a great way for learning how those skills could be utilized in a business setting. It's not just about being funny. It really is the foundational skills of communication, from being a great listener makes you a much better communicator, and using the skills of yes and really supporting other people in your conversation and listening to them. And I'll get into what yes and means to me, but then I started working with a lot of corporate clients and doing some television things along those lines. So it's been a really nice sort of creative ride through the communication and storytelling landscape. And so now I do keynote speaking about innovation, which has also been a huge passion of mine, and creativity with organizations and associations who are looking to take things to the next level.
Absolutely. When I think of innovation, in my world, a lot of that revolves around like new products and tech and science and, new drug treatments and stuff like that. And then when I met you and learned kind of this other extra way to think of innovation, which is completely legitimate around, creativity and new ideas generating from old ones, or just, spinning a thread and pulling on it a little bit to see where it leads. It's been a lot of fun to watch your work transform how you work with clients and leaders, and to adopt some of those techniques myself, including yes and, which I definitely keep top of mind when I say the word yes and I want to say the other one, I don't. And I figure out how to bring a new puzzle piece in, because the message after that word changes if you don't use the one that starts with B. So Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But tell us also, in your life, who do you admire? Who has driven you to new heights? Who's someone you regard as having kind of that higher level of executive presence or greatness? You can pick which one of those questions resonates most with the person that you're thinking of.
I'm a huge self-development person, so I am constantly on the hunt for folks who are figuring out new ways to motivate themselves, to motivate others, to share that. And so I kind of move from person to person. A couple of folks that I'm really enjoying their work because they bring a sense of humor to it, but they also
Mhm.
bring such a depth of knowledge and resources to what they do. Brian Johnson from the Heroic app, he's doing amazing work combining positive psychology with stoicism, with ancient beliefs, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity,
Wow.
and bringing all of that together to really boil things down into listen, this is what we're here to do. And
Wow.
I can't recommend his stuff highly enough. There's a bunch of free stuff online on YouTube. John Acuff is another author I just get a kick out of. I think he's really witty. I think he's a great writer. But he's also just allowing people to lower the stakes when they're
Mhm.
trying something new. I'm a huge
Mm.
believer in that. Take the pressure down
Yeah.
and make that the last thing that you think about when you're trying something new. And so that's a big part of my belief structure. It's a big part of how I get people to do
Mhm.
improvisation, which I married with innovation
Right.
in my book Playmaker Mindset.
Yep.
So
Yep.
those are two of the folks I think are really doing some great work figuring stuff out in a new way
Love it.
that's really immediately applicable.
I love it. I'm sure that our audience is, hanging on the edge of their seat to hear a little story or some kind of example from your improv days. And I want to couch it with a little bit of focus, which is what are some of the muscles or habits or things that you had to rely on or learn or build in order to have an improv experience on stage at Second City, for example, that was successful? I'm sure you crashed and burned a fair amount of times as
No,
anybody was. No, never.
no, we never.
And or maybe felt like you were, but yeah, what kinds of things are you like, how is your brain operating differently on the stage when you're just bouncing around ideas with like other actors and folks on the stage? Talk a little about that.
What's fascinating to me is how much everything I learned in improvisation applies to personal interaction in everyday life. When you talk about bouncing things off on stage, it really is the first thing we have to create is psychological safety
Mm-hmm.
and a safe space to play. And that
Mm-hmm.
when improvisers go on stage, what they do is they tap each other on the back before they walk on stage and say, "I've got your back. I've got
Nice.
your back." And so it's a really simple thing. It's you could totally miss it if you didn't see it happen. But the reality of that is, I'm not going to let you fail. You
Yeah.
can't fail. And when you are emboldened with the sense of you can't fail. And by the way, I hate that phrase of fail fast. I don't
Mm.
believe in that. I believe in win or learn.
Okay.
I think failure has a connotation to it that can't be, just kind of shrugged off. I think when people think of failure, they absolutely bring that into their core as a negative thing. So I don't want to use that word. Instead, it's win, you have success, or
Mm-hmm.
you learn for your
Mm-hmm.
next
Mm-hmm.
success, and you keep it
Yeah.
positive throughout. And I
Got it.
don't think it's Pollyanna. I think that's, a
No,
much
it's
better way of
intentional.
doing it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, one story, it's kind of improv based, but it's also was at an event for Staples, the office supply company, was having their annual meeting of their store managers and everything, and so there were probably about 1,500 people in the audience. I was with a group of actors slash improvisers who were doing interstitial scenes in between some of the speakers to kind of highlight certain points or bring up, issues or challenges that were going on in a humorous way. So it was a gentle way of bringing up these topics. So I'm backstage and I'm talking to the cast before we go on, and I'm saying, "Okay, we're going to go on in just a second. We're gonna go on." And I'm talking to one guy right here. Okay, is everybody ready? Great. I turn back around and Eric has walked on stage. Now
Oh,
there's a video playing on the big screen, right? There's those big screens that are on the side.
sure,
He,
sure.
he walked on stage and he started doing his little bit of business. This video has 5 more minutes.
Oh,
Now, two things can happen, right? He can just walk off stage and just slowly, or we can walk on
yeah.
stage and
Yes, right.
be with him for 5 minutes
Yes.
on the video. And he tells the story where he said that he was downstage, so he couldn't see what was going on behind him.
Okay.
He realizes what he's done and he's stirring a cup of coffee, imaginary, he's miming everything and he knows what he's done. And finally, the lights come up. And when they do, he turns and he sees all of us have been there the entire time.
Oh,
So it
I love
wasn't just him. It wasn't just, we had his back. We weren't going to
it.
let him fail out
Yeah.
there.
That's
Imagine
great.
going to a workplace where that's your reality.
Yeah.
Imagine, I mean, that just, you know, you're invincible. You
Yeah.
can do anything at that point.
Yeah. Superman. Yeah.
Not that
Absolutely.
hard to create, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
that's one of the things that I really try and incorporate with the things that I learned in improv and on stage at Second City and bring them to a place of training for people to understand you can have that where you work too.
Yeah. Well, I think about when I'm in the audience of an improv, watching the stage the stage unfold and things happen. And I often have thought to myself while looking at one person who says, you just say what you're thinking right in that moment about a turtle or a peanut butter sandwich or whatever it is. And someone else is supposed to respond. And then when they say something completely nutso, you're like, oh my gosh, what's the person going to do? And to your point, Jeff, if they've already been tapped on the shoulder to be like, I've got your back, it gives you this incredible freedom to
Oh,
say whatever you want because you know that no one's going to turn sideways and look at you like you're nuts. They're going to go with it, pick it up, and make that peanut butter and jelly sandwich into some kind of, 5-decker grilled cheese sandwich or something else like that. I don't know
yeah,
what they
yeah.
do, but there's I love bringing that into the workplace and that it's really all about the feeling. And we talk a lot about feelings when it comes to presentation skills and getting buy-in and how story taps feelings, but also the building of respect and trust is rooted in how you feel about one another and how you can tap trust, which is a feeling of safety, really. So,
Absolutely. That
yeah,
that absolutely comes from a feeling of connectedness. I'll wrap up this with one last story about Herbie Hancock and Miles Davis. Herbie Hancock, of course, very famous musician, composer,
yeah,
artist, and Miles Davis, one of the singular talents in jazz and on trumpet.
yeah.
Well, the first time that Herbie Hancock joined Miles Davis, part of his quintet, he was on stage and Miles is playing, and Miles would often play with his back to the audience. And so
Okay.
he's playing, and Herbie Hancock hits the wrong note. And Herbie knows it, the band knows it, and Miles knows it. And he can't believe that he did that. He was so nervous. He's a master pianist, and just
Yeah.
Miles takes a moment, hears the note, and then takes the entire song in a new direction based on that one note.
Oh, fantastic.
And afterwards, Herbie Hancock comes up. I'm so sorry. I didn't. I hit that thing, and I use. And Miles Davis said a thing that I keep in mind. There are no wrong notes. That's the note that needed to be played in order to
Agree.
go where we went.
Yes.
And
Oh,
imagine having the freedom to have no wrong notes, that we're going to go and that we're going to explore.
yeah.
We're going
We're
to
just going to
see
keep
what
going.
goes there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
maybe it doesn't lead to anything. And that's innovation. Innovation is
Yes.
exploration of
Yeah.
where the creativity could
Yeah.
take. And it's not about inventing a whole new thing. It's
Right.
about seeing what the evolution of a thought or a
Mhm.
product or a brand or whatever it is. And that's what I get people excited about doing.
Yeah.
Explore.
Yeah, I love that. Well, perfect segue because I have a sticky note up here. And I bet you learn a lot from your clients, just like I learn a lot from my clients. And this is a sticky note that one of my clients said to me, and it's about music. And it says, don't just play the notes, play the music. And so this is going to segue us into some of like the red lights and the green lights of presentations, whether it's formal or informal. But that statement came from a client whose violin teacher was trying to help her with presence, okay, and was trying to help her understand that she knew the notes and those were, completely perfect, but she wasn't getting into the feeling part of it yet, which is what is required for true presence, right? And so I know you do a lot of work that's really similar to the work that I do. So let's talk a little about red lights and green lights, playing notes versus playing music, and see where this goes. We'll innovate a little bit. The red lights, right? So for our first time listeners, we talk about red lights and green lights here because when you are in the audience and you are watching a presenter in your company, maybe he's or she is pitching for investment, you're looking at that speaker on the stage, and ultimately at the very beginning, you're kind of not sure what's going on there, and you're looking to them to help you get from the red light of risk to the green light of go. So we look at brand new people, brand new speakers, and we think, risk, I don't know you, I don't know your idea, I have not bought into whatever you're about to present to me. So it is the speaker's job to articulate the message such that the audience can say, oh yeah, I'll move you from red through yellow to the green light of go. And I will green light your idea. I will give you the money that you're asking for. I will give you the alignment and the buy-in, whether you're a board member, a vice president, whatever. So, our clientele is always looking for buy-in and alignment. And we have to teach our presenters in the world how to help an audience move from red light to green light. So when you're in your zone, and you're working with clients, Jeff, what are some red light things, behaviors, experiences that are coming to mind for you? What keeps speakers from helping audiences move forward out of the red light?
Well, to stick with the motif of the red light, green light, I always think of it as, look, you're the bus driver. You're asking people to get on the bus that you're driving. And if you think, if you're not on that bus, if you think that bus driver ain't going to get you to where you want to go, or it looks crazy or undependable or not trustworthy, you're not getting on that bus. It's the first thing you see when they pull up and that door opens, right? You're looking at the bus driver going, hey, I'll wait. You go ahead.
Yeah.
Wait for the
The
next
next bus.
Uber. Yeah. But it's true, right? And it's from the moment you walk on the stage, from the moment that you're in vision of your client, your audience, whether that's in the boardroom of two people or 2,000 people in an auditorium or in a ballroom, you have to let them know from the get-go that you are confident and you are trustworthy, that you are going to get them there. They can get on your bus. Now, you can take a scenic route, you can take the less scenic route. There's a lot of other things that go into it, right? But
Right.
that first initial interaction, that connection, if that's not there, I don't think you get past that initial red light. And
Right.
that you're done at that point. So
Right.
I would say that moment, getting connected and being confident when you walk on
Mhm.
stage and
Yeah.
stay you mentioned that idea of risk, right? And to
Mhm.
de-risk it, what are you
Mhm.
doing to de-risk this scenario for people?
Right.
And if you
Right.
can't do that, you're going to have some trouble trying to pick them
Right.
up later on.
Well, this will serve up for you the topic of passion for you. But, in our book, Red Light, Green Light, we talk about how to get stakeholder audiences from no to go. And we do that by warming them up at the onset with story. So the storytelling that takes place when it's artfully done, sometimes has to be quick, but it can be still powerful, right? Talk a little about story from your vantage point and the power of it that you've seen and experienced. I talk all about it all the time, but it's great to have our storytelling champion to share with us what you've experienced about the power of story. Why does story work, and how does it help move us through the lights if it does?
Yeah, well, I think it absolutely does. It absolutely can help, right? I grew up in a family of 11 kids. So literally during dinner, if we weren't vocal, we didn't eat. And so it was it was a, a competition for life. It was good training for life, but we
Stakes
honestly
are high.
it was, yeah. We had an incredible group of storytellers that we have in my family. I mean, we really did enjoy making each other laugh, taking each other through our days, and that type of thing. So I very much grew up in a storytelling household,
Mhm.
which was great training for everything that I ended up doing. But
Yeah.
story does so much. I mean, you hear this all the time. Story is wired into our DNA. Yeah, it is, because we not only want to stress what's important about what we're talking about, it's also why it's important.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
story does that in such a unique way. It
Mhm.
releases all the great chemicals, right? The
Yeah.
dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, all of this. So you get this dose of great chemicals. But that's it, even if you're an incredible storyteller, that's not why you're using it. You're using story to build that bridge of trust, to
Mhm.
share that universal experience of mankind, that
Mhm.
I've gone through this thing and I felt this way doing it. Do you feel that way? Have you
Yeah.
felt that way?
Right.
And if you have, wouldn't you rather feel this other way that
Right.
and so it's an emotional, it's absolutely emotional. We make buying decisions because of emotion. That's why we do it. All of the science shows us that. And then we rationalize with data, with facts. And the
Right.
big mistake I see so many people make, and I'm sure you see this all the time, is especially because we both work with a lot of technical people, right?
Right.
Founders, engineers, all of these
Yep.
in tech.
Mhm.
They'll come in and they got data after data, throughput speed, and this and the amount of, and it's like, yeah, absolutely, you need all of that,
Mhm.
but that's not going to make somebody want to get on your bus.
Right.
Them get on the bus. Give them some context for that data. The
Mhm.
context is the story.
Right.
Now you've built a connection. You both can agree on this single point. Once you've got a single point of agreement,
Right.
then you can start feeding in the
Yeah.
bridge of oh, well, then here's a piece of data that means this. Okay, and now you're on the journey together.
Right. Right.
You
Yep.
know?
You're toward that. That's like when you're getting to that yellow light zone of like, oh, I'm listening now. You've kind of got my attention. You've hooked
Right.
me and you've got me. I kind of get where what we're doing here, what sandbox we're playing in. That yellow light is like, I'm coming with you. And so I'm not asking for the next bus yet. I'm still like checking out this one to see if I want to stand. I'm like up on the stairs looking at the rows to see who's in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Right?
So I call the comfort zone the zombie zone, right? We're zombies when we're in our comfort zone. The
Yeah.
of that zombie zone
Yeah.
is that yellow light, right?
Yeah.
When they're standing there looking at it, if they're going to go into to explore the
Mhm.
comfort zone, the uncomfortable
Mhm.
area before they get to, which is really chaos, right? It's the
Right.
chaos zone. You have the zombie zone and then chaos, and then the answer, the solution, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have to make that decision that they feel safe enough to explore
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
there's so many great corollaries to that of just that first step, that decision to make that first step. That's
Mhm.
your job, is to get them
Yes.
comfortable enough to do that. Yeah,
And then if
that's a
you
huge thing.
Yeah, if you can get them to that next step and establish some level of trust to so that they keep listening, then call in the data, right? It's time to call in the data and have them come in. And then you get to do your favorite part, my friends who are all listening, who are, analytical thinkers and data geeks and engineers.
Yeah,
That's like you have your moment to shine. It's just not on slide one. Okay?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's so critical to, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, which is so great. I mean, that's such a great way to think about it. It's just not the first play.
Yeah.
The first play is to get them on the bus. The second
Yeah.
play is to tell them why this is the right bus to get
Yeah.
on, where you want
Right.
to.
Because then they're like, oh, now I'm with your I'm with your heart part. Give me the reasons why I should say yes. And if you're good at the data part and explain it well, you're on your way, right?
Sure,
So
yeah, absolutely, all
yeah.
day.
So
All day.
I'd say like this thought came to my mind just now that this, story is like the great unifier. I mean, it unifies an audience. I'm sure you've seen that. Tell us a little, Jeff, about like being in those, large big audiences and the kinds of storylines that maybe you're bringing to the table for a keynote. What's your kind of thought process when you're trying to find the right story? We talk a lot here about like story selection and how to choose the right story. So I'd love to hear your process or some of your background behind the scenes moments when you need to find just the right story.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I have a method I developed. All right, so I have a cat who is older, who is literally down at my feet right now. If you hear the cat, she's very old, and so we don't know how much more time we have with her. So
Oh,
we tend to let her free roam. So she also tends to get very loud. Uh, I apologize
it's all good.
for trying to give her a good end of life scenario here.
Yes,
Um,
for sure.
so, but that said, and I look like a Bond villain now, don't I?
Yeah,
With my
now it's like, let me tell you about story.
all right. So, um, here's the one thing that I think will help everybody, honestly, is that find the story that matches the emotion you think your audience is going through or you want them to go through.
Ding, ding. Did you guys hear that?
I
Find
mean,
the
that
emotion. That's
yeah, that's
exactly
the
it.
connector, right? That's
That's
going to
it.
move faster than anything else.
Yes.
And it's funny, it's not always the emotion you think it is. There's a
Okay. Say
guy,
more.
there's a really great salesperson, a guy by the name of Ray Leone, who teaches sales amongst the other things that he does. Um, and he will end his keynote speeches on a downer of a story. Now, for most keynote speakers, you want to have people, yeah, we're going to go, here we go. He ends it on a downer because what
Hmm.
happens is then people really want to take his course, right?
Because
Because
they're
now
feeling empty and like there's a missing piece. Okay.
it takes a lot of strength to
Yeah.
end on a downer. I mean, I have
Yes.
incredible respect for that.
Yes.
And, but you may want to play that. You have to decide not only what emotion are they feeling, you often have to decide what emotion do you want them to feel when you're done. Is it,
Interesting.
I feel great, or is it, I feel a little empty? I need this product, this service, this thing that I'm being told about to help me fill my need. So
What's interesting about that is like I'm just thinking to myself, like, what a risk for him to take, which is kind of like the speaker being, it's like sticking in the red light at the end personally, but opening the green light for them to hit go. It's like there's this different plane going on here. Like we've got the speaker and
yeah,
the lights that the speaker is experiencing, but we do still want our audiences to hit go. And for some speakers, that might mean hitting go on buying the course after feeling like they're down in the dumps,
right,
right?
right. And
Wow.
I mean, I know you work with a lot of executives as well, and a lot of corporate clients as well. You know, it's not always about delivering that rah rah speech.
No, it's
It
not.
Some
Mm-mm.
of it can be,
Mhm.
look, we are in trouble.
Yeah.
The market has done this, or boy, can you imagine the conversations that are being had right now in the AI community?
Oh my gosh. Right. Yeah.
The
So much
China just came out
people.
with a very inexpensively done AI that is equal to, if not better than, some of the AIs that the big six came out with.
Yep.
It doesn't matter any industry. There's going to be somebody who disrupts it, and you have to decide how are you going to get your team to come back and be relevant again and make sure that they're on the
Mhm.
right. So
One of our earlier guests is a former client, current client, Allie Burge, and she, one of her green light moments is sort of around what you're talking about here, Jeff, where it's not like a rah-rah winning moment at all. She's does like large real estate and builds low-income housing in neighborhoods where, guess what? The neighbors don't want it. It's like NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? So she has the difficult task of going to like the city council and getting the sneering and the wrinkled brows and the the just complete wall of NIMBY. And she's got to try like, so a win is like, I didn't get hit in the face last night, right? I didn't get spit on, so that was a green light moment for me, right? But truly, that was the first thing that we did together a couple years back. And they didn't win the property and they didn't get to build, but the win for her was a personal one of strengthening her ability to tell a better story and use that ability in the future to win more audiences and give more heart from herself and tell her personal story. So you're right, not every green light means you're going, but it means you've gotten to whatever end it is that you desire in that moment. So
Well, I
yeah.
think the other really critical aspect of that is creating the identity that you want your audience to aspire to. And
Mm,
so you need to change their identity, what their
mhm,
belief or behavior is going to be based on that belief. So you have
mhm,
to change their beliefs with your words and your story. The
mhm.
way to do that is through emotion and
Yeah,
through a story that captures that emotion that will enable them to, again, let their guard down a little bit,
yeah,
right? That trust. But then the next step is what I'm telling you is making you feel different than what you identify as.
right,
In
right.
the case of, I mean, NIMBY is that's such a great scenario in terms of, yeah, I identify as this. This is my home. This is my everything right here,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
that whole right is huge right there. And so to get them to change their thinking about them, you
yeah.
really have to get them to change how they identify
Hmm.
are. It's a very similar thing in I do a lot of work for charitable organizations
Hmm.
and things along those lines. And when they make that plug, when they are making that call,
Yeah, yeah.
they have to get people to identify as people who find that need to be critical.
Yes, yes.
Charitable organization. So,
It can't
you,
be ho hum. Hmm.
yeah, no, you got to get there, and you got to. I mean, got to change the way people think about themselves.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
lens.
yeah.
So
It's not
that's
easy. And sometimes it's a progressive thing where like one step at a time, you might be able to change people's ways of viewing low-income housing, for example. And so we have to play around with like, what is the definition of these words that you are what the connotation of words or meanings and things like that. So it can sometimes be a journey. There's no question about that. Um, Jeff, for people who are listening who are like kind of starting at square one with story, and they're, I don't know about you, but I hear sometimes I don't have any stories, and
love that.
they're
Love
just
that.
like, it's like blank screen. What's
Yeah.
a quick little way for you to encourage someone listening or watching to try out and like spin the dial a little bit? What are some risk low risk ways to start playing with story in a work environment or whatnot?
Yeah, I think the first thing is connect on the emotion, right? So, what's an emotion that you want people to feel, and when
Mm-hmm.
have you felt that way? And so, think
Mm-hmm.
about that. And so then that gives you an immediate insight into, okay, that made me feel. Whether it could be a movie that you watched, you
Yep.
don't. That's the other thing. It doesn't have to be your story. You
Right.
could
Right.
share somebody else's story and get just as much use out of it as they did. So first off, follow the emotion and see where
Mm-hmm.
that. Second off, start thinking to yourself. Now, I love it when people say, "I don't have any real stories." I mean, I
Like,
graduated college, I worked at NASA, and then I don't know. I just wound up here. So,
don't have any story.
you know, I literally had an interview with a guy today who I said, we're looking for things that you did that were kind of different and kind of unique? He goes, well, I mean, I was on the Vomit Comet once. I used to be on like the NASA Vomit where they train astronauts. Yeah, yeah, I did that for a while. Okay,
There's like
tell
10
that
stories right there. Yes.
Really, it is. So, first off, know that you have stories.
Yeah.
Second, follow the emotions, see what that does for you. And then third, I think that you want to identify periods of your life where things were happening, right?
Yes.
What happened in high school? Give me three of the
Mm-hmm.
best moments in high school and three of the
Mm-hmm.
worst.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately you've got that. And then with
Yeah.
everything you do, keep a story bank. Jack,
Yes.
a couple of quick bullets, right? I mean,
Yes.
we
Yes.
forget our story.
Yeah.
That's
We,
just how we are.
you and I have talked about this before, but we both do a similar, story bank, story log, we call it. But going through, and I sometimes say like, just start with where you've traveled. Where have you gone? What are your jobs? Where have you had pivotal moments in life? And travel is actually a fantastic storyline or type of story to draw. Everybody can identify with being lost, for example. Especially in places. I was just in Venice last summer, and everyone that I had met who had been there before was like, "You're going to get lost." And I'm like, am I really? Maybe I'll be the first person who doesn't get lost, right? Oh, I got lost because it's impossible not to get lost in Venice. But those universal feelings of being lost, afraid, nervous, ashamed, these are all feelings that are universal. And so what you need to tap requires some thought, but once you land on it, it's a really fun. I think that's what I know you would agree, like storytelling is fun, especially when you try it and you start to see some results.
Yeah, and I would say one of the things to keep in mind with that, and I agree with all of that. I think that, travel is such a great,
Oh,
God,
it's just
such a
fun. Yeah.
universal truth. There's so many things there, right?
Yeah.
I think that the other thing is, as you're telling your stories, pay attention to your audience. Try it out
Mhm.
at a cocktail party. Try it out at a restaurant, at a Starbucks,
Yeah. Yeah.
and see where people start leaning back and where they
Mhm.
start leaning in. And
Right.
be okay with editing.
Yeah.
My biggest thing, I think, with most people is they feel like they have to add every detail that happened, and it has to be 100% true, right?
Right.
And I don't look at stories like that. I actually heard a great line that I follow from Michael Davis, another
Yeah. Yeah.
storytelling
Yeah.
guru.
Yep.
But he had a great line. He goes, "Every story should be based on a true story."
That's great.
I was like, "That's it.
That's
That is
perfect.
Nobody needs to know the exact temperature of the
Yes.
room.
Right. Right.
Everybody
Just
would
give a
like to know
little
that
bit of creative
office.
freedom and innovation in the storyline. Some
Yeah.
hyperbole, a little bit of this and that. Yeah. I love it. Okay, Jeff, I'm waiting with bated breath. Tell us about yes and. Let's move toward some things you're
So
doing.
here's the big thing with yes and. Most people take yes and at its face, which is agreement and bridge, right?
Mhm.
Agree to what's being said. It's actually a deeper realization for me than that.
Just back up one step for us, Jeff, like contextualize like where this is. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, yes and really stems from the world of improvisation.
Okay.
And the idea is that yes and enables a scene to continue. When you're making stuff up in
Mm,
front of an audience,
okay.
you don't want it to stop dead. The first thing you want to do is say yes and. You don't want to say no because that
Mhm.
stops the initiation. That
Yeah.
where do you go from there? The house is
Right.
on fire. No, it's not. Okay.
But yeah, dun
What
dun
are we doing
dun.
now? Right?
Right.
There's,
And you
there's
don't have
also
their back.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And there's a control issue there as well. But when somebody makes
Mm,
an initiation, when they offer a gift of an idea or something along those lines, and you say yes, and maybe it could go this way, or you
mhm,
add your part to that, that's
mhm,
when it starts building on each other, right? That's when you have
mhm,
this really symbiotic relationship of growth.
mhm.
The yes doesn't just mean agreement. For me, and I think the basis of the yes comes from the idea of I accept that you have the right to have your opinion.
Okay.
That
Like
means
acknowledgement, kind of.
yes,
Yeah.
you have the right to your space. Now,
Yeah.
I can agree with what you're saying or disagree with it, but what I can't do is disagree with your right to have that.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
if you think about that in public discourse right now, that's a big part that's
Mhm.
lacking, is that people are like,
Yes.
you're not just wrong, you're completely wrong. Everything you're saying is wrong. And it's like, no, this is, how I view this. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, the and is the bridge to the midpoint where you could
Okay.
find agreement with each other.
Okay.
If you're both on opposite sides of a thing, if you both allow for the yes, the and allows you to meet in the middle. Now,
Okay.
that could allow you to build more from there,
Hmm.
or it could allow you just to have a agree to disagree scenario. But
Understanding, having some kind of understanding
yeah,
versus conflict that's head on.
you don't need to win a yes and conversation.
Right.
You need to devalue the other person in order to reach an accord. It becomes a conversation of where can we find the middle? Where can we find
Hmm.
our ability to coalesce? So
Yes. Yes. And people,
see, it's also
people
great.
think,
Let me throw this in. It's also great in networking events.
yes.
If you keep on saying yes and to somebody, yes, and tell me more. It's
Yeah.
like you
Yes.
can't lose.
It's great. It's great. And it's interesting because I learned something new just in these last few minutes. My initial, and I've heard you talk a lot about yes, and I'm sure you've told me in the past that it's from your improv. The other place I think about it is as an antithesis to yes, but. Like instead of the word but, which stops I mean, it's similar to the no, but softer
They
maybe, or just
call it a
less.
Canadian no.
Yes.
Yes, but it's a Canadian no. It's a very nice no.
It's a very nice no, but yeah. And so a lot of people are trying to get that word out of their vernacular, those hedging words, just, but,
Yeah.
some of these things that just keep us from the growth idea and the innovation, the playmaker mindset. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Will
And
you
it
tell
really
us a little about your playmaker mindset
well,
book?
I'm just going to say that really is what the playmaker mindset is about. It's
Okay.
about taking those tenets of improv, yes, and listening, deep listening, really
Mm-hmm.
paying
Mm-hmm.
attention to what's being said and how it's being said,
Mm.
using that to create the psychological safety, that safe area, so that we can
Mm-hmm.
lower the stakes and then start building up with ideas. When
Yeah.
you're a playmaker, if you think of a playmaker, it's not some a child sort of building blocks. A
Yeah.
playmaker, especially in sports, is someone who is seeing the entire game, right? Seeing everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's an opening over there. If we go here and then we go over here, or this is how this is laying out. They see the strategy of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A playmaker really has come into this without necessarily a personal agenda, but
Mm-hmm.
how can we make all boats rise?
Yes.
That playmaker
Yes.
mindset,
Love it.
it's if and think about it, if everybody on the team has that,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
now you're throwing the pass over here. That person is looking for who they can throw the pass to as a direct route. You get that idea of everybody is working towards the betterment of everybody else, and you really do get that positive environment that everybody benefits from.
Well, I'm going to say that you and I are both well, I'm originally from Chicago. You live there now and you're from there. I would argue that the 2016 Chicago Cubs World Series winning team had a playmaker mindset. And
Yeah.
I'm reading a book my son gave me. It's called, you'd love it, Jeff. It's called The Book of Joe. And it's all about Joe Madden and his leadership principles that he's learned from his entire amazing,
Nice.
illustrious career in managing. He's one of the only managers in Major League Baseball who never played in the majors.
Oh, really?
There's like four total.
Wow, I didn't
I
know that.
believe that's correct. If it's not correct, then it's based on a true
Based on a
story.
true story. There you go. Great.
But the point being that so many of the players on that Chicago Cubs team were under 23 years old, 23 or younger. And so they had a playmaker mindset because of their youth, their athletic prowess, their drive, their hunger, and they made magic happen and they did the impossible. So it's just coming to me that that's a fun example of that's related.
Speaking of the Cubs, the other great example of that, not for the Cubs, but was back, I think it was in, when was it, 2004 that they were in the
Hmm.
national championship, right?
Yep. Well, let's see. That's when I wasn't watching them.
Yeah,
89 and I
it
was
was
just
early 2000s
yeah,
was, and they were playing the Florida
Harry
Marlins.
Wood. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
And so the everybody talks about the Bartman, debacle and all of that stuff, and yeah, that poor guy. But they talk about that as being sort of the turning point. That wasn't the turning point. That's not when I knew the Cubs were in deep trouble. It was actually earlier in that game. The Marlins were down, right? The Cubs were ahead for a good portion of
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
And the Marlins pitcher threw the ball and it sailed on him. I mean, this thing went over the catcher, hit the backstop, and they did a shot of the dugout, and everybody was laughing. Everybody was like, "Oh my God," they were just dying. They shot back to the pitcher, and he's got his glove up, but you could see his eyes, and he was just like, he had his grin eyes on, and his glove is up. The catcher has got a big grin behind his mask, and I was like, look how loose they are. Look
Mhm.
how much fun they're having. They
Yes.
realize it was a mistake. They're not going to peg their game to it. It's just
Yes.
they're in the moment. And that's the moment I knew the Cubs were in real trouble, because the
Yeah.
Cubs were, "Oh, we can't lose it. We can't."
Yeah. Yeah. The
And
Cooks.
they had the Florida Marlins had Jack, I can't think of his last name. The manager was a 72-year-old manager. I mean, he was the oldest manager in the league.
Yeah.
But and he had this young crew, and he
Yeah.
decided to let them be young and feel the
Yeah.
feeling, but
Yeah.
make it so that it's fun to be there, so that
Yeah.
they're enabling each other. They're having fun
Mm-hmm.
with, instead of making fun of,
Yeah.
which is
That's a very dangerous place to go.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Wow, Jeff. Well, this has been such a blast. There's one final question I want to tap before we run, but it's around looking ahead. What are you kind of seeing in the tea leaves, if you will, in terms of the circles you run in, the industry you work in, the leaders that you're helping, looking ahead next 12 months? What's on your mind? What's on your leaders' minds who you work with, and what are you observing
yeah.
in the industry?
Well, I see a couple of things, and I have my fingers in a couple of different industries, from pharmaceuticals to technology to startups and things along
Yep.
those lines. And so, you know, one of the big things right now is how Gen Z and Gen AI is being treated at work, the environment
Yeah.
that they're coming into.
Mhm.
The other side of that conversation is, are they looking for too much from their work?
The
Is there,
generation, I mean, like just in
yeah,
general? Yeah,
yeah, like it needs
yeah,
to be, it needs to be safe. It needs to be, give them meaning. It needs
yeah.
to do all of these things. It's like, okay, work has never done that before. And
Interesting.
is that the responsibility of work to fulfill all of those different
That's
areas of our life?
fascinating. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the
More,
big conversation going
yeah.
on that I'm
That's
necessarily have an answer for, but I like the fact that we're having the conversations. Where
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, where does the responsibility of work to fulfill and provide meaning and to provide an
Right.
ecosystem and an environment and a family? Because the other side of it is those generations are so ensconced in social media and in a solitary pursuit.
Yeah.
They're now looking
Yes.
for their one outlet to provide everything, and it's like that's
That's not how
maybe
it's
not
been.
realistic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's
not how it's
really
been.
interesting. It's
So
really interesting. I'm glad I asked because I have not really heard that thread before, but
yeah,
it is resonating with me with some of the middle managers that we help and the ones looking for promotions and whatnot. The thought that I'm having is around how in 2020 the all bets were off as far as when and where you should and could work and how to do it. And the pandemic was um really difficult to navigate, especially for folks coming into the workforce. And now they're 4 or 5 years into it and they've changed the water. It's been an interesting experiment. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the answer either,
well,
but let's see if we can
I
find
mean,
it out.
that's not new. I mean, Gen X came in and they installed computers and the internet,
Right.
right? I
Right.
mean, it was a tidal shift. It was a complete
Yes.
linear shift that occurred, that, and that you have to be able to adapt to. So I think that that's how we adapt is going to be very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Fantastic. Jeff, where can people find you if they want to meet you, learn more about you, hear your stories, find your services?
I hang out in Cindy's basement, and I'm hoping that I've earned enough bonus points to get out to be released. I don't know
Hanging
if
on the
anybody
floor, guys, to shut him up. No.
being the eyelids. No, JeffRogersUnlimited.com, LinkedIn, meet Jeff Rogers. And yeah, those are the two best places to take a look for me.
Yes. And I'm very happy to have brought all of you listeners and viewers the storytelling champion of NSA from 2024. And now you can see why, because we've sketched out at least 12 or 13 stories that's based on a true story. So it's all good.
Easily.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Everybody, thanks for watching and being here with us. I'm your host, Cindy Skalicki, and we will be bringing you another amazing leader in our next episode of Red Light, Green Light. Until then, take good care and go nail it. Bye-bye, everybody.